Hello there children, thank you for joining me for the final part of The Secret Seven by Enid Blyton. So in the last couple of chapters read by Mr. Conway, the boys decided to go into the caretaker's house to see if they could find out who or what was in there. But unfortunately, as they did so, the two mysterious men found them and have locked them into the cellar with the mysterious Kerry Blue. So let's see how the story ends. Chapter 11. The Prisoner. Peter switched on his torch, his hand trembling as he did so. What were they going to see? What they saw was so surprising that both boys gave a gasp of amazement. They were looking down on a beautiful horse, whose pricked ears and rolling eyes showed that he was as scared as they were. "A horse?" said Jack feebly. "It's a horse." "Yes, that squealing was its frightened whinny, and thudding was its hooves on the stone floor when it rushed about in panic," said Peter. "Oh, Jack, poor thing. How wicked to keep a horse down here like this. Why do they do it?" "It's such a beauty. It looks like a racehorse," said Jack. "Do you suppose they've stolen it? Do you think they're hiding it here till they can change it to another colour or something? Horse thieves do that, don't you know? And then sell it somewhere under a different name." "I don't know. You might be right," said Peter. "I'm going down to him." "Aren't you afraid?" said Jack. "Look at his rolling eyes." "No, I'm not afraid," said Peter, who was quite used to the horses on his father's farm and had been brought up with them since he was a baby. "Poor thing, it wants talking to and calming." Peter went down the steps, talking as he went. "So, you're Kerry Blue, are you? And a beautiful name it is too, for a beautiful horse. Don't be frightened, Beauty. I'm your friend. Just let me stroke that velvety nose of yours and you'll be all right." The horse squealed and shied away. Peter took no notice. He went right up to the frightened creature and rubbed his hand fearlessly down its soft nose. The horse stood absolutely still. Then it suddenly nuzzled against the boy and made funny little snorting sounds. "Jack, come on, the horse is friendly now," called Peter. "He's such a beauty. What brutes those men are to keep a horse down in a dark cellar like this. It's enough to make it go mad." Jack came down the steps. He stroked the horse's back and then gave an exclamation. "Oh, he feels sticky and wet." Peter shone his torch onto the horse's coat. It gleamed wetly. "Jack, you were right. Those men have been dyeing him," cried Peter. "His coat's still wet with the dye." "And that's the horrid smell we smelt, the dye being boiled up ready to use," said Jack. "Poor old Kerry Blue, what have they been doing to you?" The horse had a mass of straw in one corner and a rough manger of hay in another. Oats were in a heavy pail. Water was in another pail. "Well, if we want a bed, we'll have to use the straw," said Peter, "and have oats for a feed." "We shan't need to," said Jack. "I bet old Colin and George will come and look for us soon. We'll shout the place down as soon as we hear them." They settled down onto the straw to wait. Kerry Blue decided to lie down on the straw too. The boys leaned up against his warm body, wishing he didn't smell so strongly of dye. Up in the field, where the snow was now rapidly melting, Colin and George had been waiting impatiently for a long time. They had seen Jack and Peter disappear over the gate and had had a difficult time holding Scamper back because he wanted to follow them. They had stood there quietly for about half an hour, wondering whenever Peter and Jack were coming back, when Scamper began to growl. "He can hear something," said Colin. "Yes, a car, coming down the lane. I do hope it's not those men again. Jack and Peter will be caught if so." The car had no trailer van behind it this time. It stopped at the gate of the old house and two men got out. Scamper suddenly barked loud and was at once cuffed by Colin. "Idiot," hissed Colin. "Now you've given us away." One of the men came to the field gate at once. He gazed at the 6 snowmen. "Come and look here," he called to the other man, who went to stand beside him. How Colin and George trembled and quaked. "What? Oh, we saw the snowmen there last night. Don't you remember?" he said. "Some kids have been messing about again today and built a few more. Come on, that dog we heard barking must be a stray one about somewhere." The men left the gate and went up the drive to the house. Colin and George breathed freely again. That was a narrow escape. Thank goodness for their white faces, caps and sheets. Thank goodness Scamper was in white too. For a long time there was no sound at all. Colin and George got colder and colder and more impatient. What was happening? They wished they knew. Were Jack and Peter caught? At last, just as they thought they really must give up and go and scout around the house themselves to see what was happening, they heard sounds again. Voices. Ah, the men were back again. There was the sound of a car door being shut quietly. The engine started up. The car moved down the lane to turn in at the field gate again, go round in a circle and come out facing up the lane. It went by quickly, squelching in the soft, melting snow. They're gone, said Colin, and we were real idiots not to have stolen up to the gate and taken the car's number. Now it's too late. Yes, we could have done that, said George. What should we do now? Wait to see if Peter and Jack come out? Yes, but not for long, said Colin. My feet are really frozen. They waited for about 5 minutes and still no Peter or Jack came. So, sloshing through the fast melting snow, the two boys went to the gate. They climbed over. Soon they were in the drive of the old house, hurrying up to the front door, with Scamper at their heels. But, of course, they couldn't get in there, nor in the other doors either. And then, like Jack and Peter, they discovered the open window. In they went. They stood on the kitchen floor and listened. They could hear nothing at all. They called softly, Jack, Peter, are you here? Nobody answered. Not a sound was to be heard in the house. Then Scamper gave a loud bark and ran into the passage between the scullery and the kitchen. He scraped madly at a door there. The boys followed at once, and no sooner had they got there than they heard Peter's voice. Who's there? That you, Colin and George? Say the password if it's you. Weekdays. Where are you? Called George. Down here, in the cellar. We'll come up, said Peter's voice. We're all right. Can you unlock the door, or has the key been taken? No, it's here, said Colin. Left in the door. He turned the key and unlocked the door. He pushed it open just as Jack and Peter came up to the top of the cellar steps. And behind them came somebody else. Somebody whose feet made a thudding sound on the stone steps. Kerry Blue. He wasn't going to be left behind in the dark cellar all alone. He was going to stay with these nice, kind boys. Colin and George gasped in astonishment. They stared at Kerry Blue as if they'd never seen a horse in their lives before. A horse? Down in the cellar? Locked up with Peter and Jack? How extraordinary. Have the men gone? Asked Peter, and Colin nodded. Yes, away in their car. That's why we came to look for you. They saw us in the field because Scamper barked, but they thought we were just snowmen. What happened here? Let's get out of the house, said Peter. I just can't bear being in here any longer. He led Kerry Blue behind him, and Colin was surprised that the horse made so little noise on the wooden floor of the kitchen. He looked down at the horse's hooves and gave an exclamation. Look, what's he got on his feet? Felt slippers, made to fit his great hooves, said Peter with a grin. That explains the curious prints we saw in the snow. I guess he had those on so that he wouldn't make too much noise down in the cellar. My word, he was scared when we found him. Come on, I'm going home. Chapter 12. The End of the Adventure. 6 figures went up the snowy lane. 2 boys in dark anoraks, 2 in curious white garments and caps, a dog in a draggled white coat, and a proud and beautiful horse. All the boys had gleaming white faces and looked extremely weird, but as they didn't meet anyone, it didn't matter. Peter talked hard as he went, telling of all that had happened to him and Jack. Colin and George listened in astonishment, half jealous that they too had not shared in the whole of the night's adventure. I'm going to put Kerry Blue into one of the stables at our farmhouse, said Peter. He'll be all right now. What a shock for the men to find him gone. And tomorrow we'll tell the police. Meet at 9:30 and collect Pam and Barbara on the way, will you? This really has been a wonderful mystery, and I do think the Secret 7 have done well. Goodness, I'm tired. I shall be asleep as soon as my head hits the pillow. They were all in bed and asleep in under half an hour. Janet was fast asleep when Peter got in. He had carefully stabled Kerry Blue, who was now quite docile and friendly. In the morning, what an excitement! Peter told his father and mother what had happened, and his father, in amazement, went to examine Kerry Blue. "He's a very fine racehorse," he said, "and he's been dyed with some kind of brown stuff, as you can see. I expect those fellows meant to sell him and race him under another name. Well, you've stopped that. You and your society, Peter." "What about getting on to the police now?" said the children's mother anxiously. "It does seem to me that they ought to be after these men at once." "There's a meeting of the Secret Seven down in the shed at 9:30, said Peter. "Perhaps the police could come to it." "Oh no, I hardly think the police would want to sit on your flower pots and boxes," said Mummy. "You must all meet in Daddy's study. That's the proper place." So, at 9:30, when the seven were all waiting in great excitement, and Scamper was going quite mad, biting a corner of the rug, the bell rang, and in walked two big policemen. They looked almost astonished to see so many children sitting round in a ring. "Good morning," said the inspector. What's all this about? You didn't say much on the phone, sir." "No, I wanted you to hear the story from the children," said Peter's father. He unfolded the morning paper and laid it out flat on the table. The children crowded round. On the front page was a big photograph of a lovely horse. Underneath it were a few sentences in big black letters. "Kerry Blue stolen. Famous racehorse disappears. No sign of his hiding place." "I expect you saw that this morning," said Peter's father. "Peter, tell him where Kerry Blue is." "In our stables," said Peter, and thoroughly enjoyed the look of utter amazement that came over the faces of the two policemen. They got out notebooks. "This is important, sir," said the inspector to Peter's father. "Can you vouch for the fact that you've got the horse?" "Oh yes, there's no doubt about it," said Peter's father. "You can see him whenever you like. Peter, tell your story." "We're going to take it in turns to tell bits," said Peter. He began. He told about how they had made snowmen in the field. Then Jack went on to tell how he had gone to look for his Secret Seven badge in the field, and how he had seen the car and its trailer van. "Of course, I now know it was a horse box," he said, "but I didn't know then. I couldn't think what it was. It looked like a small removal van or something. I couldn't see any proper windows either." So, the story went on, how they had interviewed the caretaker and what he had said, how they had tracked the car down to the field gate and up the lane again, then how 4 boys had dressed up as snowmen with Scamper and gone to watch. Then came the exciting bit about Peter and Jack creeping into the house to find the prisoner and being caught themselves. And then Colin and George took up the tale and told how they, in their turn, went into the old house to find Jack and Peter. "Adventurous kids, aren't they?" said the inspector, with a twinkle in his eye, turning to Peter's mother. "Very," she said, "but I don't at all approve of this night-wandering business, Inspector. They should all have been in bed and asleep." "Quite," said the inspector. "I agree with you. They should have told the police, no doubt, about that, and left them to solve the mystery. Wandering about at night dressed up as snowmen, I've never heard anything like it." He spoke in such a severe voice that the children felt quite alarmed. Then he smiled, and they saw that actually he was very pleased with them. "I'll have to find out the name of the owner of the old house," he said, "and see if he knows anything about these goings-on." "It's a Mr. Holocaust, 64 Haycombe Street, Covilty," said George at once. Pam and I, found that out." "Good work," said the inspector, and the other policeman wrote the address down at once. "Very good work indeed." "I suppose they don't know the number of the car, do they?" asked the second policeman. "That would be a help." "No," said Colin regretfully, "but the other 2 girls here know something about the horse box, sir. They took the measurements of the tyres and even drew a copy of the pattern on them. It showed in the snow, you see." "Janet did that," said Barbara, honestly, wishing she hadn't laughed at Janet for doing it. Janet produced the paper on which she had drawn the pattern and taken the measurements. The inspector took it at once, looking very pleased. "Splendid! Could it be better? It's no good looking for tracks today, of course, because the snow's all melted. This is a very, very valuable bit of evidence. Dear me, what bright ideas you children have." Janet was scarlet with pleasure. Peter looked at her and smiled proudly. She was a fine sister to have, a really good member of the Secret Seven. "Well, these children seem to have done most of the work for us," said the inspector, shutting his notebook. "They've got the address of the owner, and if he happens to have a horse box in his possession whose tyres match these measurements and this pattern, Then he'll have to answer some very awkward questions. The police went to see Kerry Blue. The children crowded into the stable too, and Kerry Blue put back his ears in alarm, but Peter soon soothed him. Yes, he's been partly dyed already, said the inspector, feeling his coat. If he'd have one more coat of colour, he'd be completely disguised. I suppose those fellows meant to come along and do that tonight, and then take him off to some other stable. But, of course, they had to hide him somewhere safe while they changed the colour of his coat. And so they chose the cellars of the old empty house, belonging to Mr. J. Holocaust. Well, 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 I wonder what he knows about it. The children could hardly wait to hear the end of the adventure. They heard about it at the very next meeting of the Secret Seven, which was called not by the members themselves, but by Peter's father and mother. It was held in the shed, and the two grown-ups had the biggest boxes as seats. Janet and Peter sat on the floor. Well, said Peter's father, Mr. Holocaust is the owner of the horse box, and of the car as well. The police waited in the old house for the two men last night, and they came. They are now safely under lock and key. They were so surprised when they found Kerry Blue gone that they hardly struggled at all. Who does Kerry Blue belong to, Daddy? Said Peter. The paper said he was owned by Colonel James Healy. Is he sending someone to fetch him? Yes, said his father. He's sending off a horse box for him today, and he has also sent something for the Secret Seven. Perhaps you'd like to see what it is, Peter. Peter took an envelope from his father and opened it. Out fell a shower of tickets. Janet grabbed one. Ooh, a circus ticket and a pantomime ticket too. Are there 7 of each? There were. 2 lovely treats for everyone, except Scamper. But he can have a great big, delumptious, scrumplicious bone, can't he, Mummy? Cried Janet, hugging him. Whatever are you talking about? Is that some foreign language? Asked her mother in astonishment, and everyone laughed. On the envelope was written, for the Secret Seven Society, with my thanks and best wishes, J.H. How very kind of him, said Peter. We didn't want any reward at all. The adventure was enough reward. It was brilliant. Well, we'll leave you to talk about it, said his mother, getting up, or else we shall find that we belong to your society too, and that it's the Secret 9 instead of the Secret 7. No, it's the Secret 7, said Peter firmly. The best society in the world. Hurrah for the Secret 7. There we go. That's the end of The Secret 7 by Enid Blyton. We hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed telling it. It's the first book in the series, so if you enjoyed it, there'll be many more for you to read. See you next time. Bye!